need to get back to dominating, but let's talk about how they are going to plan accordingly to bring a tight end back to this roster so it can help balance out the offense. What's going on, Eagles fans? Cory Nidoh with you here on Fan Arch, and we are going to talk about some tight end targets both in the draft and via free agency. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Jalen Phillips. But first, we're going to start with what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni said during the NFL Combine yesterday as the two spoke to the media. And it really wasn't a whole lot of newsworthy sound bites, if you will, from either Roseman or Sirianni. They're going to play it pretty close to the chest. Nick Sirianni basically talked about how impressed he was with Sean Mannion, and that every time he spoke with Mannion and heard the conviction and the attention to details that we know Nick Sirianni loves to pound to his players about the attention to detail and focusing on the little things, it certainly resonated with Sirianni with how Sean Mannion was able to propose how he would take over this offense and be a successful fit for Philadelphia. Meanwhile, for Howie Roseman, he talked more about the player personnel and some of the moves or the angles that the GM might be looking at, and he made it pretty evident that they are going to go all in on acquiring a second cornerback to play opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. He essentially thanked Adoree Jackson yesterday, mentioning how Adoree played well, especially as the season progressed and he was getting used to playing in Vic Fangio's defense. He also mentioned that Cooper DeJean more than likely is still going to stay in that slot cornerback position. He called Cooper DeJean elite multiple times, said that the Eagles, Vic Fangio, they just love what Cooper can bring in terms of that nickelback position, whether it's coming up to stop the run, if it's sniffing out screens, if it's helping out in the passing game. They really don't want to move Cooper DeJean to the outside, although Howie Roseman felt pretty confident in his words that if they had to, he would be elite on the outside as well. Also, Howie Roseman did mention that the door is always open for Brandon Graham, which I think you could pretty much chalk it up as BG will be coming back for yet another season. Brandon Graham even said at the end of this past year that if Howie Roseman and the Eagles opened the door and would welcome him back, he certainly would take that opportunity. And it certainly seems like Howie Roseman has just put that offer out there publicly, mentioning how much Brandon Graham means to this team, this organization, and all of what BG has done both on and off the field for the Philadelphia Eagles. With that said, that's kind of the too long didn't read, the spark notes, if you will, of the press conference between Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. Again, really wasn't a whole lot there to kind of soak in and chew on, but a couple of tidbits nonetheless. Now, let's talk about what the Eagles do at tight end, right? Because right now, there is really no tight end on the roster other than Cameron Latu. Dallas Goedert is a free agent. Howie Roseman did mention yesterday in his presser that he plans to talk to Dallas Goedert's agent, and he said that he's very appreciative of Dallas Goedert and what he's meant to the organization. So it doesn't sound from that this is a all-in. They're focusing on Dallas Goedert coming back, obviously, but they are going to have an open line of communication and perhaps see where the tight end is looking for in terms of a contract. We know that Dallas Goedert ended up taking a very heavily discounted deal after the Eagles really couldn't shop the tight end anywhere to come back and play for Philadelphia, and he played to earn a bigger contract. He was one of the best offensive weapons, if not the best offensive weapon for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. A career year for Goedert personally. He had 11 touchdowns, a franchise mark there in terms of finding the end zone. So right now the question is, do the Eagles entertain and try to bring him back on a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, or do they attack in the draft? Now, I could see them doing both. I do think it's more likely, though, that Dallas Goedert will not be a Philadelphia Eagle, and they will use some draft picks on a tight end. Two guys that stand out to me right now, Max Clare of Ohio State, started at Purdue, seems like he's a consensus top 5'10" tight end right now in the draft class as it stands. He's got solid hands, can move well, works up the sideline, smooth but an explosive route runner, good with the ball in his hands. He's a middle of the field nightmare who I think would fit well in this Sean Mannion offense, who wants to utilize a lot of under center play action. You get a tight end that's a weapon that can look like he's going to be blocking, and then he can release and go up the middle of the field and create some havoc against linebackers and safeties. My one concern with Claire is he may be kind of a Grant Calcaterra type in terms of blocking. That's his knock right now, is that he has struggled in the blocking department of the tight end position, and we all know how poorly Calcaterra blocked this past year, and Grant Calcaterra really was a receiving first tight end, and that's what sounds like Max Clare might be at this point of his young career. Another target that I really like, Eli Stowers of Vanderbilt. Extremely athletic. He's electric. He won the John Mackey Award, which goes to the top tight end in the country. If you haven't looked, the guys prior who have won that award have been bona fide stars at the tight end position. Tyler Warren won it last year, or 2 years ago now, I should say. Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders won it twice. Trey McBride of Arizona, and Kyle Pitts, your last 4 winners. And if you go even further back, the guys like TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews also won the award. So if history has anything to say about winning that award, it shows that the tight end who wins the top award in the country in the John Mackey Award go on to have a pretty darn good NFL career. So Stowers looks to fit that bill. He has a good track record. In general, I just don't know if the Eagles are going to even get to Stowers or even Claire for that matter. I do think that they more than likely are a second-round pick. Now, the last time the Eagles used a second-round pick on a tight end, it was Dallas Goedert, and before that, Zach Ertz. So it hasn't been impossible for the Eagles to do something like that, but it certainly hasn't been something that Howie Roseman is accustomed to doing in terms of spending a second-round draft pick on a tight end. So if they don't get those draft picks, there's other tight ends that we'll talk about as the weeks and months progress, but there are some free agents out there as well. A guy that could be intriguing, Cade Otton. He was with Tampa Bay over the last 4 years. He's worked with Josh Grizzard, who's now obviously on the Eagles coaching staff. Otton's kind of more of a tight end 2 type player, though. I don't think he's going to have the production that Dallas Goedert put together. Otton, though, is only 26 years old. He's shown some flashes of being a potential weapon over the middle of the field. Didn't rack up a ton of yards. Only had 1 touchdown last year in a pretty high-scoring offense for Tampa Bay before they got decimated with injuries. But I do think that Cade Otton could be a less expensive option, if you will, to be a bridge player or maybe a Band-Aid if the Eagles end up drafting a tight end in this draft, where it's either one of the guys I mentioned in the second round or maybe somewhere later in rounds 3 through 5. But I think Cade Otton could be a possibility. I know there's some people out there that like the thought of Isaiah Likely, the tight end 2 over in Baltimore, who has been playing in the shadows of Mark Andrews. Likely has popped off in some games when Andrews hasn't been playing. He's also a very athletic wide receiver, kind of a receiving first tight end, though, as well, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing in this Sean Mannion offense, but nonetheless, you still want a tight end out there who can serve as a 6th blocker on the line of scrimmage for the running game, and to also give Jalen Hurts maybe a little extra time on these play-action passes. David Njoku's still out there, the longtime Cleveland Brown. He has some blocking ability. He also is a physical specimen over the middle. I think he is going to be a little too expensive, though, in terms of what Howie Roseman is allocating for a tight end with what the market is currently and what is available via the draft. So there are some options for the tight end position. I do think that it is important that Howie Roseman obviously addresses this position this year in the draft. I was surprised, and I mentioned this in a previous show, that I thought that they were going to go and take a tight end in last year's draft. I thought that was a pretty deep tight end class, especially later on in the middle rounds, but they opted not to. Now they need somebody at tight end, because right now they don't have anybody at tight end 1 or even tight end 2 that is really notable at all. And that's no disrespect to Cameron Latu, but he's not a Dallas Goedert. He's not even a Cade Otton. So Howie Roseman has some work cut out for him. I'm interested to see how he goes about attacking the tight end position. I do think it will be an important role, especially if A.J. Brown potentially gets traded. Obviously, that's still up in the air based on some of the comments and some of the reports that have come out. But right now, the Eagles desperately need and definitely need a tight end 1 on this roster moving forward. Moving on to the other side of the football, I think a priority for Howie Roseman is to sign Jaelan Phillips. The Eagles currently only have 3 edge rushers on their roster. Howie Roseman did mention yesterday that he likes to carry 7 or 8 going into training camp. And Jaelan Phillips is most likely on top of the to-do list for Howie Roseman. He is one of the top 3-5 available free agents. If you look at different publications and different rankings and lists, Jaelan Phillips is typically in the top 5 for good reason. Before he joined the Philadelphia Eagles, weeks 1 through 9, the Eagles ranked 14th in pressure rate and 25th in sacks. When Phillips joined the Eagles starting in week 10, the Eagles bumped up all the way to 6th in the league in pressure rates and 5th in sacks. So I think that this is paramount that Jaelan Phillips returns as a Philadelphia Eagle. Howie Roseman mentioned in his presser yesterday how well he played in Vic Fangio's defense. And I do think that Vic Fangio would not have come back if they didn't think that there's a good chance that Jaelan Phillips will return as an Eagle. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Jaelan Phillips is going to take a hometown discount. He has earned a nice payday at the end of the season after the wild card loss to the 49ers. He was asked if, what if he'd like to be back with the Eagles, what's he looking for? And he said he would love to be back in Philadelphia, but he does want to make sure that his family is financially taken care of. So he already is looking for financial stability. He and his partner are expecting a baby sooner than later. So him and his wife, his girlfriend, they are expecting to bring a child into this world, and the players want financial security. I mean, we all get that, right? So I think Jaelan Phillips understands he played himself into a pretty good position by coming to Philadelphia in the middle of a playoff race, and he performed more times than not. So I do think the Eagles will have to try and match his asking price, and I don't know if they will necessarily, but they also aren't going to franchise tag him or perhaps any free agent. That's just something that the Eagles haven't really done. And if they franchise tag Phillips, you're looking at a 1-year deal that is included up to $23.5 to $28 million guaranteed, pretty much, which is pretty hefty. Now, Howie Roseman did say yesterday that for the Eagles, it's probably going to be tough to kind of hodgepodge and piecemeal together a lot of 1-year deals, and that the best way to do it is to keep these guys together by signing them to long-term deals and extensions with the guys that they still have currently under contract. So, that could be a little eye-opening for a guy like Reed Blankenship, who many might think might only take a 1-year deal, but we'll see what his market is. But Jaelan Phillips is definitely going to command a good chunk of money, north of at least $20 million a year. But the Eagles need a bona fide edge rusher moving forward, and Phillips is only 26 years old, so the best is probably still ahead of him, and he showed that he could handle playing in the Philadelphia market. He really enjoyed his time with the teammates in his locker room. I spoke to him a couple of times about how he's been enjoying and acclimating himself to the team, and he had nothing but high praise for all the guys in the locker room. He said that Although he's been there for a month or two, he feels like he's known some of the guys for years. So there's definitely a good camaraderie there between Jalen Phillips and the defensive side of the football in that locker room. It's just going to come down to, does Howie Roseman meet the demands and the asking price of Jalen Phillips? And how much money does Jalen Phillips want to make? Does he want to make the most money possible and maybe he goes to a team that isn't a Super Bowl contender? Or does he leave some money off on the table and return to Philadelphia knowing that he has a chance to be in the playoffs every year and potentially win a Super Bowl? This is a guy that never won a playoff game before in his career, and he was able to taste it with the Eagles this past season. Obviously, Philly didn't get the job done, but if you're Phillips, I think you'd like to think with this defense, the way it's structured and built, that the Eagles have a way better chance of making the playoffs and winning some games than perhaps some other suitors that might throw out a lot of money for his services. So, a couple of topics there to talk about. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Do they bring Dallas Goedert back? Should they bring Dallas Goedert back on a 2-3 year deal? Or do they just, cut ties, thank you for everything he's done, and go and get a young tight end in the first couple of rounds, second, third, fourth round? I think the Eagles might go O-line in the first 2 rounds, but if one of these talented tight ends slip, maybe Howie Roseman takes a chance and uses that second-round pick, or maybe he even moves back in the draft. We never know what Howie Roseman has up his sleeve come draft day. But with that said, would love for you to please just drop a like, drop a comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel here on FanArch. It's a big help, and love to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think? Should Dallas Goedert be back? Should they go after some of the tight ends I mentioned? Is there a tight end that you really like that the Eagles should target? Should they bring Jalen Phillips back? There's a lot of questions surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason, and hopefully as the days and weeks progress, the Eagles are progressing in the right trajectory as well. And we'll talk more about the Combine as it gets underway later this week. As always, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow.